Neville Brody. Born in 1957 in the United Kingdom, Neville Brody is one of the most celebrated graphic designers in the world. At the beginning of his career, he spent 3 years studying at the London College of Printing, where his student work was met with harsh criticism and even failed due to his innovative approach to graphic design. But it was this very approach that soon made Brody a household name in the design world. His work as the creative director of The Face magazine helped set many of the defining trends in the contemporary graphic design. Once harshly criticized for his innovative style, Brody went on to become one of the most successful graphic designers to come out of the United Kingdom, working with some of the world's biggest brands and even designing for the England national football team on multiple occasions. He also founded Brody Associates, a design agency that grew into a successful global studio. Today, he also serves as Professor of Communication at the Royal College of Art. This is Two Stocks with Neville Brody.
Well, first of all, I would like to say it's a pleasure and honor for us into the studio to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Sajad. It's a pleasure to be invited. And I would have liked to have done this in Turkey, but
Well, hopefully we can do this in future in person.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, what are you mostly busy with these days? Is it teaching or is it the work at the studio, graphic design work?
Everything. It's a kind of I thought that as you got older, you would be doing less, but actually it's kind of it doesn't work. I'm sorry, Sajad. There's a busy future ahead for you. So there's the studio is really busy right now. And work is mainly in Japan and Korea and the US. We haven't had much work in London at all for many years, but hopefully we're going to try and build some more local clients to here. But we tend to be very global, which means that I also have to travel a lot. And then I'm Professor of Communication at the Royal College of Art here in London, which just got voted again for the 11th year the best art school in the world, which is mad. 11 years. And there I'm a professor, a little bit of teaching, mainly research and discussions and projects. All of that's keeping me busy all the time. And sometimes I sleep, but not often.
Yeah, but I assume it's a good kind of busy, doing design work and doing what you love.
Yeah, I mean, running a studio, as you know, you're part of a community. There's also a lot of management that goes on as well. And graphic design isn't, unfortunately, like painting. You can't, it's not about getting up and thinking, oh, I'll have a blue day and everything will be painted in blue with some cats. Now I'm mocking art, but what I'm saying is that the profession of graphic design is a profession as well, meaning that we have to manage clients, we have to manage presentations. And what we do these days, Sajad, is more, it's shifted a lot, and we'll come back to this, but it's much more about building systems for clients now, building platforms for them to deliver content and express content. So I think in the past, it was more like do a record cover or a book cover or a poster. Now it's like develop the system that'll work digitally so that they can keep publishing new content. So it's a big shift.
What's really interesting about what you do right now as a professor in Royal College of Art is that when you were a student and studying at London College of Printing, you faced some really harsh criticism about your work and about how you designed and how you looked at graphic design. And at that age, dealing with these type of treatments and this type of criticism from your tutors, it can lead to demotivating you and basically hurting your journey in graphic design world. But for you, it not only didn't stop you, but it motivated you to pursue what you were doing and the way you were looking at graphic design. So I wanted to ask you about those days.
Well, when I was a bit more than criticized. I was being attacked in a way by some of the staff there. And as I said before, they tried to throw me out of the school in the second year because I dared put the Queen's head sideways on a stamp, which is kind of crazy, but it revealed that they were trying to teach that there is a specific way to do things, and that if you do something different or unconventional, it's not allowed. And these were my day-to-day tutors, and it's kind of my fault, really, because I thought if you want to learn how to improvise and change the rules, you have to learn the rules. And then I thought, well, at that time, the most strict education in graphic design in Europe at that time was London College of Printing. So I went there knowing that I would be taught rules and tradition, and that I wanted to learn those and then find a way to use them to create different outcomes. Unfortunately, they didn't see the positive in that, and tried to throw me out. And then at the end of the third year, I was failed by my tutors. They said I hadn't completed the course, which I had. I've done every project, just not in the way they wanted me to. And then they said, and I had no commercial potential, which is obviously very much based on what they knew. And then, but the external assessors gave me a first. So I was completely failed. And then at the other end of the scale, given a first, a one in the degree assessment. So it ended up as a 2-2, which is so mediocre at that time. But what I realized then is that you're not at art school or in education to serve the institution. You're there to serve yourself. And everything that you do while you're there is about your personal development. It's not about trying to make the art school be more elevated. And a lot of tutors tend still to say, no, this is the way you have to do it because this is what we think is successful. And this is how the industry works. But the reality is, so at the Royal College of Art, it's taught in such a way that people expect graduates to come and change the industry, right? So then I thought, well, I'm going to try and prove that fighting against the system is potentially a really positive thing. So in a way that drove me to keep experimenting, but you can't just experiment. You have to work really hard, Sergio. You have to be committed. You can't be an uncommitted graphic designer. It's not a 10 to 6 job, even though these days a lot of people want to try and make it a 10 to 6 job. But it's a commitment of passion. You have to do it. You can't just go, okay, I've got to leave. That's the project finished. It's like the project isn't finished. I'll make sure it's brilliant. So
one of the questions I actually had from you is about dealing with clients when doing these projects. Is your approach to graphic design is very experimentalist, and it has that poetic side of artistic side of graphic design. But sometimes we deal with such clients that they just don't see that side of graphic design. And in order to get to a point, a mutual ground where the designer is happy with their work and they brought their personal creative touch to it, and the client is happy with the result as well. How do you find that common ground with such clients?
Well, things have shifted quite dramatically in the last 10 or 20 years. In graphic design, it used to be very much focused around the printed object. As it's shifted into the digital platform, it's less singular, there's less of a focal point, because content is swiped off the screen really quickly. So how do you build a narrative around 100 things, as opposed to 20 years ago, it was build a narrative around a single thing. So in the past, you could do a poster, and then that would become a campaign, and you would see it everywhere, and it would be reproduced, or a flyer or a catalog. But now that poster or flyer will be on screen for a few seconds, and that's it. So then you have to follow it up with another image or another story, which means the focus has shifted completely away from the singular expressive object and more towards an expression as a language, as a way of talking. So I understand that clients these days are not interested in the one-off expression. They're interested in help us develop a language set that we can use, that we can own, that is us, so that everything we say is part of our expression. So we're doing a lot more strategy and engineering now. In a way, we've shifted towards what I call the era of graphic engineering, and away from graphic design. So 100 years ago, it was graphic art. So before the First World War, it was much more graphic art. It was Toulouse-Lautrec. It was Mupcha. It was decorative. It was skillful. It was illustration. And then in the Second World War, with Dadaism, it sort of became reinvented as graphic design, which led to constructivism, futurism, the Bauhaus, and then graphic design as we know it today. So that all came out of that. And it's all been driven by technology. So now with technology, it's shifted once more so that the emotion is in the content. And the content might not be designed anymore. It might be like today, it's an interview or, and this is content and it drives numbers. So the shift now is towards how can you build a system and a language that has personality embedded?
So what do you think the future of graphic design, this human way of graphic design, expressionist way of graphic design looks in the age of artificial intelligence in future?
So first of all, I think we're shifting towards an era where it's graphic engineering and graphic art again. I think graphic design is now a kind of a niche area. It's graphic design for graphic designers or graphic design for educators. But there's not many, certainly to try and make a living, there's not many opportunities out there to be a graphic designer anymore. People don't want complex logos because it has to scale to this, it has to scale to a screen, or even a social media profile pic, which is tiny. And it has to be effective at that size. So they're not complicated. They're not expressive logos and logo types and identities anymore. And it's about everyone's using the same furniture now. It's all the same color range, slightly dirty colors, usually lots of oranges and greens with a bit of blue, curved edges, chunky fonts, something that brings attention. And what people are doing is they're focusing graphic design onto the components. So you build a system and then you have a choice. Either you use a conventional typeface in an unconventional experimental way, or you use an unconventional typeface in a conventional way. And most people go for the unconventional typeface because a digital space is usually fixed. You can't suddenly turn things sideways or have a lot of white space with a small logo, or those things are fixed. Those are grids. So all you can do is change the things that go in the grids. So those are the components. So it's the font, It might be some icons. It might be images. And this is the language that you use then, and this is where the expression comes. It's in the components of the language. AI is a tool, just as when the PC arrived, it was a tool. But what we didn't realize when the PC arrived, that it would transcend being a tool quite quickly and would become the space we live in. The same will happen with AI. That's inevitable. It's inevitable that people are using it right now as a tool. It's all about virtuosity. It's all about, look how skillful this looks. And it's been done on my laptop, It reminds me of when everything was made with airbrush, and it would all look hyper real and polished and super singing. And now people are doing the same with AI. If you go on LinkedIn, it's full of 3-minute movies people are making with AI, and then very soon it'll be complete movies, and it still comes down to then who's doing the directing, who's curating, who's creating the prompts. And at the moment, it's still an area of intuition that we own as human beings. We have the capability of lateral thought, so we can think outside of the grid, whereas AI is very much responsive. But then that will change again with AGI. And that ability to be more abstract, then I think that will be the real challenge for us. How do we maintain our sense of humanity, which is largely based on that space between abstract and specific? But if AI can do abstract as well as specific, then we might as well just sit on the beach. I think it will be.
Just put the prompt in and go to the beach.
Yeah, but I still think we'll have an important role. People said when the PC arrived, it would be the end of the design industry. But actually, it was the opposite. And there's more people applying to become graphic design students now than ever before. So the other thing then, coming back, Sajjad, to your question, is that I think people will start making limited run posters or one-off book designs, or there's a yearning for that limited edition tactile object. It'll be like a limited edition of 100 posters, or it'll be, and in London there's a shop called Mag Culture, and it's full of 200 independent magazine publications, all short run, all printed using modern printing, which is much cheaper. It's digital printing, so you don't need printing plates. And it's a booming space, and then vinyl, and then I think the poster industry is about to take off again. I think people want something that's real on the wall, not just a screen. So, as I can see behind you.
Yes. Hey everyone, Sajjad here. First of all, thank you for listening to the podcast. I wanted to quickly let you know about our merch drops. Right now, I'm wearing one of our designs, which I really like, which is about when designers end up doing everything, from design to copy to video and even social media. Our merch store is full of cool designs, specially made for graphic designers to wear. So make sure you check out our merch store. Also, our website is up. ToolsStudio.com is live. Our website now has the complete archive of Tools Studio videos, Tools Talks episodes, and exclusive interviews and articles only available on ToolsStudio.com. So make sure you check out our new website. And finally, if you want to support us and you like what we are making and you want to actually help us to be able to create more content like this, you can join Tools Studio on our Patreon account. You can also get discounts on our merch by joining our Patreon account. Now back to the episode. You talked about people applying to be graphic designers these days. I wanted to know When a graphic designer submits their portfolio to your studio and wants to work in your studio, what is it about their work or their portfolio that stands out, that makes you think that, okay, this candidate is, closest to what you want to see in the studio?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because we're looking for people that understand or would be capable of understanding strategic design. Because everything now has to have meaning. It's all part of a narrative. You can't just go, I want to use this font because I like it. It has to be, I want to use this font because it aligns with your values about responsibility, authority, and charity, for instance. I mean, so we always have to start off with that strategic context in order to position all the decisions that are made. So the ability to be able to think strategically is really important. Secondly, the ability to make things digitally, physically, is really important, and to be able to step back and assess that. And then thirdly, the ability to break the rules. Yeah. How
And
can
do
you
you
think?
see that in your students as well, the desire to break the norms?
Yeah, I think that's part of the appeal of the Royal College of Art. They go there to learn how to work in industry and how to break the rules of industry, which makes them stand out from wider society. So, yeah, we always encourage that. And the other thing we do at the Royal College, which is additional, is we try and encourage social awareness. So what is the social impact of what I'm doing, and how can I help society through my skills?
That's actually one thing that I wanted to ask you, is that what do you think is designer's role towards its society as a designer and towards the global political climate?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many levels to that. One is, don't work for a business that you think is harmful to society in any way. Um, and I'm not going to state specific companies, but it has to be a place of conscience, because as designers, we have skills to manipulate the way people think and react. So we need to use that responsibly and for the good of the planet. But the other thing, sorry, you'll just have to say that question again, Sajid.
I was asking, what do you think is the role of designer towards this global political climate?
Yeah, there was an important point I wanted to say, and I knew it, and then my mind has just forgotten it. I might have to come back to that point. It's just that we are trusted by the public, and if we're endorsing something, and what we do is we take invisible concepts and make them tangible. So we'll take banking or insurance or I don't know, vacations or investment, and we make those into tangible things. So we're actually giving form to these invisible concepts, and in doing so, we're creating the way people should think about those things when we give them form. So that's a really trusted position. So effectively, we actually have two kinds of clients. One is the person who's paying us and commissioning us, but our client is also the public that are going to live with what we do. They're the ones that will have to deal with us on a day-to-day basis. So we have to face both ways. We can't just say to a client, "Yeah, we'll increase your sales by 1,000,000%." Then we have to figure out, well, are we doing this in a responsible way? But the point I was going to make is that today, because social media is what we call entropic, its complexity becomes simpler and simpler and simpler, to the point where it's almost black and white. It's in the speed and the time we have to focus on anything. It's a singular thought. It's an iconic image, or it's a caption, or it's a phrase, or it's a bit of anger, or and when you do that, you lose all sense of sophistication or complexity, because then it becomes me versus you, or literally black versus white, or America versus the rest of the world, or so it becomes polarized. So in that space of polarization, you have war, you have Brexit or Remain, you have the West versus the East, and it's a dangerous space. So part of what I'm trying to do, and I think a lot of people are sensing this, is we have to embrace difficulty again. There's no gray anymore. It's one extreme or another. There's nothing gray. There's nothing like, I partially agree with you, but not entirely. That you can't do that. And then if someone disagrees with you, it means they're opposite to you. So it's all our media now is potentially a place of conflict, and that's really difficult. But it's an area of conflict on every level.
Yes, and one of the main differences in graphic design world today compared to your time, for example, as an art director for the Face magazine, is that you were in charge of the whole magazine's identity as an art director. But in today's world, your design, either as an art director, as a graphic designer, your design comes across social media, where whatever you came up with, whatever identity that you designed, is just a square within another brand's, where there is Facebook, Instagram. It's your design compared to this other brand's identity. And my question would be that what are the chances, and how can a designer become a Neville Brody, that their personal touch is visible within these social media platforms in today's world?
Well, I think I was lucky, extremely lucky, to be working in design and media when I was working in design and media. I don't think it's possible or relevant to be that kind of designer anymore. I think the time will come again when, as I said, I think graphic art will find a new place. But there hasn't been people like that for a long time. There hasn't been another Paula Scher or Stefan Sagmeister or Tibor Kalman. Maybe those days are over. I honestly expected to be replaced and made redundant after like 10 years and done, because it was always changing on 10-year cycles, and then it didn't happen. And then I realized it's because the design space, the media has changed completely. And it's not about the individual who designs the space. It's about the individual who performs in the space now.
Yes, the individuality aspect of design, I don't want to say it's gone, but it's at least very hard to find these days.
Yeah, it's become very much about the entertainer, and about, as we know, the attention economy. How can someone attract more views or likes, or so it's in the power of numbers. And sometimes it's completely random how someone might start to gain a lot of views. And it might be just doing something different to everyone else, and that's it. Jumping on one foot, like, for a day might do it. Maybe I should try that, maybe. But yeah, the problem is that graphic design, the design spaces we work in have become more like looking at an office block from the outside, with all the windows. It's all gridded. And the only thing you can really do there is perform in that window or change the curtains, And that's it. It's box. Whereas I had the luxury of working in editorial design, where the relationship and scale between image and text and headline and space, and then continuity, what happens on the next spread, that was all part of the editorial journey. And it was more like making a film or a movie, and you take someone on that journey. Now in social media, you don't scroll up, you just scroll down. No one scrolls back to make connections. Whereas in a magazine or a book, it's all juxtaposition and journey. So I think social media has killed juxtaposition.
Yeah, although the graphic design world has changed a lot since, let's say, a decade ago, but I think one of the biggest lessons graphic designers can learn from your career and your work is confidence in your creative input. When I look at your work, I'm in awe of that. That the fact that you were able to always bring in your creative touch, that individual touch, that human touch to all of your works, that I think as a designer today, for me to have that confidence in myself to do the same thing, I owe that to you. I owe that to iconic graphic designers like yourself that made us believe that it's possible to actually do that. So I wanted to ask you about how difficult was that for you, or how was it for you to do this?
Thank you, Sajjan. I believed that if I compromised, I would lose everything. So at the beginning, after leaving London College of Printing, I said, right, I'm not going to compromise. If I compromise, it's all over. I lose my voice, my vision. So at the beginning, it was really difficult. I mean, for 4 years after leaving university, art school, I was in poverty. I was broke. I was living in a squat. It was hand to mouth, meaning I didn't know where my food was coming from the next day. And my dad said, just get a job in advertising. And I said, never. That's not where I'm headed right now. And I think it's about the ability, or the willingness rather, to take risks. And I think that there's a generation of people now that are so focused on comfortable life and trying to shift that insecurity away, that they won't take creative risks. And I think that's a big shift. And it happened in the 80s, where culture shifted from being about thinking and ideas and society. Culture shifted to become a commodity, and consumerism took over all of culture. And we're still experiencing that. We're still in the long tail of that decision. Because if you shift society away from cultural thinking to materialism, you nullify a lot of the political issues. So after punk and what happened in the 80s, people got shifted into shopping. And we're still, as I said, on the long tail of that, where life comfort is more important. People won't risk anything.
And are there any of your project, is there any of project that has a different personal meaning to you, has that, special space in your heart?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. I think possibly one of the most key things that we've done as a studio is Fuse. And you have to look back at Fuse. Fuse started in 1990. And this was before corporations had taken over digital media. And the possibilities then of what digital media could do, because it put the tools into the hands of everybody. It was democratizing. which meant that suddenly we could design typefaces, and then given that, we could suddenly experiment with that and try different forms. And I sometimes I look back at Fuse, and I show Fuse to my designers here, for instance, and they're always quite shocked at how radical it was and how modern it is. But we're talking about something that was started 35 years ago. Kind of shocking in a way, but I don't know whether there's been anything more advanced than that in that time. So yeah, a Fuse to me was one of the most important things, maybe historically, that we've done. And I think at some point people might come back and rediscover. I mean, the designers that got involved in Fuse were just phenomenal. And the fact that they were happy to engage with designing typefaces in a really experimental way, I think laid the ground for a lot of kind of modern typography. So yeah, I would say probably Fuse more than anything.
And also, as a designer who later in life opened his own design studio, I think as graphic designers, it's a dream for all of us to one day opening our own design studio. What do you think are the additional skills apart from graphic design skills, creative inputs that one needs to know in order to run a successful design studio?
Yeah, well, you're running a business, aren't you? At the end of the day, so study business. I learned it all without studying, and I wish I'd actually said stop, because I didn't want it to be a business, but I was just fighting the inevitable. It is a business. You have to survive. You have to pay people. You have to pay the rent. You have to eat. You have to charge clients, and that takes a lot of business skill. And the other thing is people skills. How do you work with people? How do you work for people? How do you get people to work for you? And keep it as a kind of as a collaborative, constructive, positive space is quite challenging. And then the final thing, which I think none of us are good at, is how do you sell yourself? It's really hard. We're good at doing that for our clients, but we're so bad at doing it for ourselves. Because if we do it too much, people don't trust us anymore. And if we don't do it at all, people don't notice us. So, where is that sweet spot?
Yes, very well put. Also, one last question that I would love to ask you is that if you had to pick the most influential designers or artists that influenced you throughout your career, who would they be?
Oh my God. That's a trick question. Yeah, that is really a trick question. Oh my God, I wouldn't even.
And I want to mention that your name came up as an answer to this question before. So,
Oh, really? Right, interesting. I wish I knew who that was and I'd mention their name, but yeah. So historically, I mean, Kurt Schwitters, Alexander Rodchenko, of course, who you've also covered in one of your episodes. Jimi Hendrix. Just trying to think. There's so many. Brian Eno, Robert Fripp, David Bowie. So that's a kind of a whole area. Cabaret Voltaire, the band, and the original cafe in Zurich, where Dada happened. Tibor Kalman, I thought was amazing. Nobody knows him, and he was just genius. I think people need to go and look at his work again. I realize I haven't mentioned any women at all. And women, poets, singers, Jill Scott, for instance, who I find incredibly powerful. Oh my God, so many. Solange. I think she's genius. We could go on all day.
I would like to thank you again. It's been a pleasure and honor to have you here in Two's Talks to hear your thoughts about the future of graphic design, the future of creative world, and your suggestions for upcoming graphic designers. And I would love to have these discussions in future, hopefully in person.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Sajad.
Thank you. Thank you.